Welcome to Sleek Notes E-commerce Boost Podcast, your chance to learn from the e-commerce experts so you can boost your business.
Hey there! This episode is all about Instagram selling. So if you've ever doubted what hashtags you should use, what content is effective on Instagram, and how you drive purchases to your site, you've come to the right place. The CEO of Whole Design Studios, Giles Thomas, takes you through the fundamentals of creating a successful Instagram profile that boosts your sales. Let's roll! Giles, welcome so much on the show. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thanks, Julie. It's really great to be here.
Cool. If you could just start out by presenting yourself, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Giles Thomas. I'm the founder of Whole Design Studios. We're a 40-person strong Shopify marketing agency for fashion brands. I also blog at Acquire Convert about Shopify marketing processes and at risepro.co with Instagram expert Angelo Presti about e-commerce Instagram marketing. So we've been helping e-commerce brands grow with Instagram through our services and also online courses since about 2015.
Amazing. And that's perfect because today, obviously, we're going to talk about Instagram marketing. So can you just tell me what's there to gain for an e-commerce to be present on Instagram?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So obviously we all know that Instagram's turned into somewhat of a marketing juggernaut. So they have around 800 million users now, 60 or 70 of which are quite active. And that makes up about 30% of US internet users. So there is a lot of penetration, especially in the American market, which I guess a lot of your users and listeners are interested in. So about 70% of those active users are regularly engaging with brands. So you can see that it's not just kind of person to person or personal profiles people follow. It is also for brands. And that's about double the size of Facebook in terms of brand engagement. I'd say the most compelling reason, though, is that about 30% of Instagram users have purchased something they found on Instagram or were recommended through their friends. So you can see it really does drive purchases to stores.
Amazing. Brilliant. But how do you then optimize your Instagram profile for business? So if you want to start up being present on Instagram, how do you suggest I should go about starting that?
But I mean, I'd say the first thing is, and it's a bit counterintuitive, is that you shouldn't actually start with a business account. So as we know, a lot of these different social media networks, they more and more are limiting people's organic reach. And obviously now this has got pretty bad on Facebook, where it's more or less just a pay-to-play network. Actually, if you open a business account on Instagram, automatically your reach is kind of choked. So what we recommend is you open a personal account for the first year of growth and be very aggressive with your growth over the first year, and then migrate to a business account so you can just change it from a personal to business after about 1 year. And there's very easy tutorials you can find on the business.instagram.com website just to how to set those things up. They're very simple.
So what's the reason again that you then should set up the business account afterwards? Are there any perks from doing that?
Yeah, so analytics will be a great thing. Once you have the business profile on Instagram, you can go into the analytics tab and you can see things like engagement and post reach. And these are obviously important metrics to measure and track to understand what types of your content is performing well. I think also other parts of the profile that you could look at, and I guess there's quite a few different areas, but obviously the username is really important. If possible, it's good to get it to be your actual business name. And if if this is already taken, you can add words like official or basically extendable words that make it so you can get more or less the right username. But I think what it really comes down to is the profile photo and the bio. I think that's what really attracts people to accounts. So if it's a brand, you really just want to use your logo in the photo. One common mistake I see as well is people really cramp their logos into the profile photo. They don't put much padding or kind of negative space around it. So make sure you don't do that because it makes it hard to read. And I think legibility is really important. If you have a small logo, you perhaps need to make it into just a letter type or something that's more appropriate to that profile photo size on Instagram, because it's only about 110 pixels. It's not very big. For a personal brand, I would say you want to go for a headshot. So make sure you're kind of smiling and showing some teeth, perhaps making eye contact with a slight squint. That's generally what we kind of recommend. And don't do things like dark photos or full body shots or wearing sunglasses. At the end of the day, one of the powers of social media is that it's very human and authentic. So, show your face, show your eyes, and let people see who you are.
Sure. So, yeah. What type of content should you then share on the Instagram account? Because obviously there's a lot of different things getting shared on there. So what do you suggest?
Yeah, it's difficult to choose the types of content to create. I guess now with Instagram, there's so many different options with stories and live. And I think really what makes content effective isn't the types of content you choose, although it does kind of play a role on reach at the moment. But I would say what's more important is quality and consistency in that quality. So we always advise by starting by creating something like a brand style guide. So this is like a rule book you can follow. So every time you're creating content for Instagram, you make sure that it's true to the brand and also consistent with previous content. So if you look at other timelines of very successful brands on Instagram, you'll see that they're very stylized, perhaps in terms of the color palette or just basically the consistency. The second thing will probably be to say that you need to tailor the content to your customer persona, to your target customer for your e-commerce business. So there isn't really like a best type of content. It's what works for your customer. So you can do qualitative data collection analysis and create customer personas and basically make sure that whatever content you're creating, it's answering the questions and serving, like the passions basically of the people who follow your timeline. If you really wanted like just a kind of a rule, like this is the kind of content you should create, what we do is we say people to post 3 times a day on the timeline. And that can be a mixture of video or image content. Maybe I'd say around 10% video is a minimum. And this can also include like mention posts to other influencers or people who are kind of larger in your niche that you want to engage with. For Instagram stories, also every day, if possible, probably 2 or 3 slides a day is kind of a minimum. But when it comes to things like live, it can be much less, once a month or once a week is fine. People don't expect a lot of live content. And also it takes quite a bit more putting together. So focus on timeline and story content and make sure it's every day. I would say a maximum of 3 pieces of content per channel there.
Yeah, and what sort of images sort of works better? Is it product images, direct sales? Is it behind the scenes? Or what are your experience?
Yeah, so I'd say it's a mixture. The best thing to do is to make a content planner, right? So think about the types of content you want to create and then give them a ratio of how much of your content you want to focus on that specific type. So I think you shouldn't go over the top with product imagery. You don't want to be selling all the time. And I think things like behind the scenes can be very, very powerful because it shows that you are a real brand and that you're people and you're authentic, right? Which is, I think, a lot of why people are on Instagram is because they don't just want to see brand advertising. They also want to see who's behind the brand and, and what do they do and what is their life like. Humans are intrinsically curious, and I think that's what makes Instagram quite successful. So as with most things, there isn't really a one size fits all rule. Obviously, some brands will perform better with more or less content of a different type. But I would say the most important thing is making a plan and understanding from the get-go how you want to kind of separate that content out in terms of, 20% will be behind the scenes, 40% is product team. As long as you have a plan and stick to it and then kind of track it and change over time, you can see what's performing well. But it's always best to stay away from kind of like just one size fits all rules.
Great. And then I'm thinking in terms of descriptions under the images. Are there any best practices? Because if you don't know, hashtags are like a massive world to itself. And if you're not really into what hashtags are trending and stuff, how do you then find out what to use?
Yeah, that's true. I think with descriptions, what we've seen generally is longer descriptions perform better. Like anything with content, I guess the more effort you put into it, the more it kind of performs better. I think if it's a sales or a product focused post, then really you want to make it a value proposition. So similar to maybe what you have in the header of your homepage or what you use in some of your acquisition marketing ads, you want to have a value proposition which describes, why someone would shop with you, what you offer and how you do that uniquely. And then also you need to add in a call to action. So a lot of times I see people not adding call to actions in their descriptions. You can send people to the link in the bio, and you can update this, even per post if you want. With software, you can automate that. So I'd say, focus on value propositions in the copy and include calls to action. So always think about every piece of content like a landing page, right? What you really want to do is drive people to a specific action.
Behold the Instagram filters. Posting an image isn't just press and publish. There are a countless of options as to filters, lighting and colors. Giles Thomas shares his advice on filters, editing images and posting strategies.
I guess this comes back to consistency, right? So as we said before, when you're branding your timeline, you want to create a brand style guide. So something that you have to follow and to use as a rule book. I think this very much applies to the filters as well. So within the brand guidelines we use, we also allow people to choose one or two filters. So the idea here is you understand which filters fit your brand's look and feel, which ones are appropriate to the source imagery you have, and then you just stick to that. You don't want to vary through the filters much. You want to have one core filter and then maybe one or two others you use sparingly. But the most important thing is consistency. And for that, it comes down to things like the color palette and just basically having consistent content that flows well together.
I think you mentioned it earlier, but is it true that it's light images with nice lighting and stuff that works better on Instagram?
Yes, definitely. So I think how well an image is lit is huge. And this is true also for Instagram stories and for live. I think lighting and audio quality more and more are important. That's not to say you need to have really high production values in everything you do, because sometimes you then lose authenticity, which I think is, as I said, one of the key things in Instagram. But if things are poorly lit and they're grainy and the image quality is poor, then people don't tend to like that. If you look at the really successful brand accounts, the images are very, very crisp. So when you upload an image to Instagram, you can actually upload it at like 2 times the pixel density ratio, and then it gets downsized to about 50% of the size of the image. So you can go pretty big with the images.
Cool. Then what about the optimal posting days and times? Are they different from Facebook and emails? Are there any rules you should follow?
I don't think for any one account you're going to have a one-size-fits-all rule again. I think it depends on your audience. When are they online? When are they engaged in the app and in your timeline? I think the best thing to do here is to use softwares to your advantage. A lot of the softwares, like Later, for instance, they have algorithms built into them to learn from your historic data when the best time to post is for you, right? So obviously you can take the kind of the rule of thumb, like in the mornings at lunchtime, and when people are sitting on their sofa, probably like dual screen viewing, then this is generally going to be a good time to post. But I would say leverage the algorithms and leverage the software we now have at our disposals to use your historic data to get posting time exactly right.
Sure. And can you just recommend any tools that will help an e-commerce boost their business on Instagram?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think Later, that used to be called Latergram. For me, this is definitely the best tool for Instagram. You can do visual planning and scheduling, which is really nice, of the content. You can also do search and kind of curate UGC or user-generated content. And they even have analytics. So you can use their tracking analytics on top of what you get from Instagram to have kind of a better insight into what's performing well. I'd say the only downside to Later is that you can't schedule from a desktop, right? So you can get everything in place, but when the final publish button needs to be pushed, it has to be done on the phone. So for that reason, in our agency and also in our online course, we recommend a tool called OnlyPult, which is not a particularly brilliant tool, but it is one of the only ones that does allow you to do desktop remote publishing. So as soon as you've scheduled it on the desktop, you can push it all the way to the timeline. And it's done in a way, that technology works in a way that it's not dangerous. So you're not breaking any kind of Instagram terms and conditions, and you're not risking getting your account blocked. So
great. So what about interaction on Instagram? Is that I'm guessing that's quite important for a successful account, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I think engaging with people and interaction is absolutely huge. When we think about Instagram, we always talk about one-on-one marketing, and I think that's the power of Instagram, is that you can make people feel pretty special and actually cared for, compared to kind of traditional marketing channels that are really much more about kind of broad advertising and not really personal. So in our service, for instance, we do manual commenting and liking. So we actually have a team of people on phones in the customers' accounts going into, we call them competitors' accounts, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a competitor. You just want to focus on other accounts that have the same customer persona or the same target customer that you would like. And you can go and see which of their followers are really highly engaged, and then you can do commenting and liking on their content and kind of engage them one-on-one. And you can also do this the same, like manual following and unfollowing. So with Instagram, you can follow, or you can change your follower account by around about 100 people per hour. I wouldn't do more than 60 or 80 in terms of following or unfollowing, and I wouldn't really recommend doing it more than around about 6 times per day. This is what we've seen is kind of the limit to keeping the account safe from being flagged by Instagram as kind of hacking growth. So yeah, you want to look for people who are highly engaged from your competitors' followers or similar account followers, and do following and unfollowing and manual commenting and liking. And don't use any softwares for this unless you have a very, very complex setup, which I've only seen that 1 or 2 people have, and this is normally when they're hosting bots on servers, and this is quite complex to do well. The automation software is not very authentic, and it's clear that people aren't really being engaged with one-on-one. So I would stick to the manual work.
Sure. When you say following and unfollowing, is that then one user that you then go and follow and unfollow, or what? And why do you do that?
Yeah. So what you can do is you can follow, as I say, up to 100 people per hour. And then what you're going to have is a reciprocal follow back rate. So a certain percentage of those people are then going to follow your account back, and this is going to grow your following. At the end of, say, a period of following, say a week or 2 weeks, you then want to unfollow the people who don't follow you back. Otherwise, your follower to following ratio will be quite skewed, and people will see that you don't have like a very clean account, and it'll also have an impact on your engagement statistics.
Right. Okay. So you actually want more followers than you follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Right. So a final question. Do you have a few ideas as to Instagram sort of campaigns that might help increase sales and then boost the Instagram profile while the e-commerce is getting started?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the most important thing is user-generated content and working with influencers and brand ambassadors alongside this. So, you can do following and unfollowing, you can do commenting and liking, you can create great content, but nothing really grows accounts as quickly as working with other people who already have large established accounts. And the most authentic way to do this is through content generated by the end user or by the influencer. So ASOS, which is obviously quite a well-known e-commerce brand, they have a very famous campaign where they had a lot of brand ambassadors who had ASOS-specific Instagram accounts. So, for instance, they would be called like ASOS Julie or ASOS Giles, and they were all creating content and linking back to the core. It was a UK ASOS account, and this drove really a lot of growth to their account and a lot of traffic and sales as well. I think probably alongside using influencers and brand ambassadors would just be to make sure that you actually do have a real sales funnel. So from your profile, don't just drive people to the homepage. If you're in the US now, you can actually have shoppable products in the feed natively in Instagram. And if you're outside of the US, you can use tools like 460 or Snapped. And these allow you to create a kind of a shoppable version of your Instagram timeline. So alongside obviously using things like influencer marketing to drive growth quickly, you also want to make sure that the followers you do get do have a clear path to sale in your store.
Cool, amazing. So what, there's a tool that can allow visitors to shop directly from your Instagram feed, or?
Yeah, so if you're in the US, you can now natively add shoppable tooltips on your Instagram posts in the actual native timeline. And if you're outside the US, you can use kind of like a fake version of this, which is like 460 or Snapped, or there's a few different tools you can use. And they basically duplicate your timeline and then allow you to add shoppable tooltips. So what happens is, say, for instance, you have a hat on your head in one of the posts. If someone taps on the hat, it pops up with a price and a product description, a name, and you can click through from that to the actual product page.
That's so cool. Right, okay, Giles, thank you so much for your time and your amazing insights. Really happy you had the time to do this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's nice chatting with you, Julie.
All right, it's time for you to get Instagram trendy. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please leave a rating before you go. See you soon.
This session of E-Commerce Boost was produced by Sleeknote. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on tactics and strategies that'll help boost your e-commerce.